Well, thank you very much. It's actually it's kind of an honor to be the Edmonton representative down here today. So you'll have to be gentle on me just a little bit. But when I was asked to be a part of today's conversation, I was absolutely humbled. Probably my first reaction being quintessentially Canadian, I thought that they were maybe looking for a different Sam Jenkins. Perhaps somebody sharing my name was an author I'd never heard of, a poet, a politician, a gold medal Olympian. Because really, what would I have to talk about? What would I have to share in today's conversation? But after several assurances that I was in fact the right Sam Jenkins, I became a little bit excited, a little bit nervous, but mostly excited. But then I had to ask myself, well, what am I going to say today? Of course, I am Canadian. There's no question about that. And I do consider myself to be proud to be true north strong, free. And this is a persona that I often take for granted. I think we all might. I've always had access to education, opportunities to challenge myself, and peers that absolutely respect my opinions and perspectives. And to me, being Canadian has always been a natural fact, and obviously not questioned. So that's when I started panicking. What was I going to say today? What could I say to inspire people about Canada's biggest anniversary coming up? Be controversial, they said. Tell a great story. Challenge people about how we should think about Canada's birthday. These were all things that I knew I could do, but I didn't know where to start. And if I couldn't figure out what made me Canadian in that sense, or what it meant to be Canadian, how would I be qualified to talk about this important milestone in our history? So then I looked back at my personal journey, how I got to where I am today, and kind of some of the steps that I want to take tomorrow, and then I got a few ideas. So I identify myself with several hats. Most days I'm an entrepreneur. Right now, as you mentioned, my company is building tools to help organizations invest in the well-being of their staff. And at WellNext, what we're trying to do is change how people treat their staff through health and wellness, employee engagement, interaction, community development, a whole host of other things that I'd love to talk for hours on. We probably could have chosen an easier mountain to tackle. And I probably should have listened to people a little bit closer when they said starting a business is really difficult. And it's way harder than I could have even imagined, no question. And I'm sure my business partner agrees. But the rewards are so much greater as well. But in any case, helping employers treat their staff better is definitely a worthy application of our Canadian good nature, but not necessarily a Canadian endeavor exclusively. So then I looked at other parts of my life. So on other days, I consider myself a volunteer. I invest my time in organizations back home in Edmonton, and do this in order to ensure that my community stays strong. Currently, I'm lucky enough to sit as the chair and president of Fringe Theatre Adventures. And for the past 30-some years, we've been the presenter of the Edmonton International Fringe Theatre Festival in August. Now, for those of you who aren't from Edmonton, there are a couple of us here, and those of you who aren't part of the theatre arts community, or for those who don't know, Edmonton's Fringe Festival is one of the world's largest unjuried and uncensored celebrations of art and culture in the world. So I thought, maybe a little bit selfishly, why not celebrate Canada's 150th birthday at our festival? I mean, I could commit to you today that by 2017 we'll sell 150,000 tickets to commemorate the birthday celebrations, although I'm pretty sure our staff listening back home probably just cringed. There's going to be a little bit of anger later on. So I won't make that commitment. But I could go on to tell you about how our festival last year did sell over 110,000 tickets, and how we were the catalyst for 147 new works of theater art, or about how we put over $1 million into the pockets of artists, or about how our volunteers, as a labor of love, contributed over 20,000 hours to make our festival possible. All these I love numbers, so I'll use numbers a couple more times. So I thought this would be a great idea, but I sat a little longer, I dug a little bit deeper, and I realized that more importantly, the festival wasn't the important part, but it was where the festival came from. It came from an idea that had to start somewhere. It was an idea that was championed into a realization. Now, our festival started with a very, very simple question. What happens when we build a safe place for people to experience and create? And what happens when we remove those barriers, at least some of them, that enable creators to do something that they do best, create? Now, obviously, I can't take all the credit for our festival. And Edmonton and Canada's first Fringe theatre event started back in 1982. There's probably not enough gray hair for you to realize that I was a little bit younger back then. And I wasn't around for those initial years, but Brian Paisley, the founder of the Fringe, his idea was powerful enough to help transform a city, at least for 11 days during the summertime. Now, that first Fringe theatre event presented 12 shows, 200 performances across 5 venues. A pretty good start for a first festival, and because of some funding from the Alberta government and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, our festival happened. Today we present 210 shows, close to 2,000 performances across 55 venues. And as I said earlier, our city transforms. But more importantly, it transforms because people champion this idea of accessibility, of openness, and intense creativity. Now in Edmonton, the Fringe Festival has become an incubator of ideas and of creativity, like I said earlier. And in actuality, what started as a small idea, spawned from that simple question, has itself become a generator of epic successes and, of course, equally epic failures. And that's when I came to the realization that my definition of being Canadian doesn't have anything to do with a Canadian maple leaf sewn on a backpack, or hockey, even though I do love my Oilers, maple syrup, or even politeness. It has to do with ideas, and more importantly, the freedom to embrace, encourage, and champion ideas. And it has to do with the fact that we as Canadians are not afraid of risk, of challenge, and of hard work to make ideas real. Canada truly is a safe place to have our own ideas. And the unfortunate thing, that is something that we all, well, many of us take for granted. Certainly I do. Now back home, I've also been fortunate enough to be involved in a pretty innovative nonprofit social enterprise called Startup Edmonton. We're a social enterprise that focuses on igniting creativity and fueling entrepreneurship. And we do this through things like workshops, training, co-work spaces, mentorship, funding, and of course, community development. And at Startup Edmonton, we have a bit of a mantra that we say a lot: don't wait, start now. And I think as Edmontonians, we do a pretty good job of doing just that. But I'm not here to talk about Edmonton's identity. I'm kind of here to talk about mine as a Canadian. And that being said, Canada is a nation of ideas. Because of the open nature of our society and our communities, we have locked deep down within our collective DNA the ability to foster and encourage each other. And in order for us to live up to our potential as Canadians, it is our responsibility to champion all of these ideas. And we know there are good ones, there are mediocre ones, and there are downright horrible ones, but ideas are ideas. And in my opinion, the best way we can celebrate being Canadian is to champion ideas in our communities. Because ideas are powerful. They transcend region, religion, race, orientation, other bits of culture. And an idea that's something that we as individuals, as communities and groups, can champion ourselves. So let's not wait. Let's get started on this today. We don't have to wait until 2017. So that brings us to my big idea for our nation's birthday. So there'll be 12 of these gatherings happening over the next few months, several thousand people getting together for these dialogues, and that's a lot of Canadians keen on celebrating Canada. So I'm challenging each and every one of you here today, also people who are watching on the webcast and who happen to watch us on YouTube afterwards, to go out and find someone in your community and help activate their idea. Just one person. And this could take many forms. An easy way, perhaps there's an idea that needs a bit of a financial kickstart, maybe $150 or so. Or perhaps you find someone that needs your voice, so commit to making 150 phone calls. That's far too many phone calls, so maybe 150 emails or at least 150 Facebook messages. Or maybe discover a young Canadian with an idea that needs that additional catalyst. We all have limited time, but I'm sure we could all find 150 minutes over the next few years to mentor someone to their next great idea. And this is how we can go out and transform our nation. And as I said earlier, let's honor what it means to be Canadian by going out and doing something that makes an impact, a true legacy. Because regardless if we're successful, it's our ideas that will continue to shape our cultural identity. Thank you.